So, Philippa, today might be a little bit more controversial compared to yesterday's pleasantries, shall we say?
I think so. I think it could be pretty lively. There is a lot to discuss. So, for example, at Downing Street, issues like climate change or Huawei, the Chinese tech giant, and whether it has a place in a British 5G network. Those kind of issues may well be on the agenda when President Trump meets Theresa May. There's also the question of who else he might meet. Let me bring my guest back in here, Greg Swenson, a merchant banker here in London, but also a spokesman for Republicans Overseas UK. We were just saying, well, there's the formal meetings, but there's also quite a lot of interest in whether the president might endorse a candidate for Conservative Party leadership.
That's right. Yeah, it's an exciting moment for the candidates, and I think they're all jockeying a little bit. My guess is any one of them would like to have the endorsement or at least the acknowledgement of this president. And so, you know, it could be an interesting informal moment in this, this part of the trip.
Yeah, and the name that comes up, obviously, is Boris Johnson,
right,
because he's already almost been endorsed, hasn't he?
Yes,
really?
And he's got a lot of similarities with President Trump. You know, they have these sort of personality similarities that I think that he would like to take advantage of, and the president seems to like him, or at least he's mentioned him in the past.
How would you describe those similarities?
Well, I mean, they're both very flamboyant, and they both crave attention, and they both, are sort of outspoken, to say the least. So, yeah, I think you could see that, and I think Boris would be very excited to have any sort of time with the president, especially at this stage in the campaign.
So I suppose that's a possibility in the schedule when the president's at Winfield House, the U.S. ambassador's residence.
Right, because that's where you could have some guests that we don't anticipate. I haven't seen the list if there is one yet, but I'm sure there is. But so far it's been very orchestrated, as you know. It's been very scripted. I think maybe today there'll be some opportunities where it's not quite as scripted. And maybe even some questions and answers with the president. We'll see, but I think the candidates would be quite anxious to get in front of him.
And what about Mr. Farage, the Brexit Party? I mean, a long-time friend of Mr. Trump's. Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think maybe the president's been advised to keep his distance. You haven't really seen much about it. Who knows? He could be there too. I mean, that would be kind of interesting.
I think you're not ruling it out.
I would not rule it out. Anything could happen. And now, again, so far it's been very scripted, and this president does not necessarily like to stay on script. When he does, I think he's more effective. We get this once a year with the State of the Union address. Unfortunately, it's only once a year. But so far so good. I think he'd like to be unscripted. I know, when asked, he wanted to have a press conference, even though his advisors, perhaps did not. But we'll see. I mean, it could get a little bit looser today, a little bit more relaxed, which I think the president would embrace.
You always have that sense of him bridling against his restraints, because he does like to speak from the heart and just go for it.
Absolutely. I mean, there's some cringeworthy moments with this president where you roll your eyes and I'm sure his advisors say, I wish he hadn't said that. However, it's part of his appeal too, and it's one of the reasons he was elected. There was this growing discontent with politicians, as usual, that sort of say something that they don't really mean, and he just kind of shoots from the hip, and he's very candid, obviously. So, that's his style. If you want formal, diplomatic, well-mannered communications, he's not the president for that. But in this, during this cycle, it's been very popular and it's worked for him.
Yeah, we may see more of it today. Greg Swenson, thank you very much for the curtain raiser.
Good to be here.
And Sally will be watching, obviously, whether at the business breakfast or at Downing Street, or perhaps speaking at the ambassador's residence, whether we see a little more vintage Donald Trump come through. Obviously, we'll be bringing that to you as it happens.
Thank you so much, Philippa, who is at Buckingham Palace.